Today, we'll be speaking on the topic Pathways to Happiness, suggested in Indian philosophy, or human-centric approach. And second address will be entitled The Problem of Consciousness, Idealism and Solipsism, some contact point with Western Indian philosophy. So, I would request today's speaker, Professor Pradeep, to kindly garland the portrait of Madan Mohan Malviya ji. And I would also request Professor Anand Mishra to please accompany him in this process with the garlanding of the portrait. Now it's time for the rendition of Pradeep. I would request the student of this PG department of philosophy to please come up and sing this very beautifully written and composed university.
सुधर्म पथ पर चला
Pathak and Alice Anand for such a beautiful rendition of University Anthem. Now I would request Professor Anand to please come and felicitate Professor Pradeep Gokhale sir by offering him a shawl and a bouquet or garland. Now I would request the head of the department, Professor Guest Officer, to please deliver the welcome letters.
इस सेमिनार हाल में उपस्थित सभी का मैं स्वागत करता हूँ। ये हम लोग चोकोलिंगो मेमोरियल लेक्चर सीरीज के लिए यहाँ पर इकट्ठा हुए हैं। ये चोकोलिंगो मेमोरियल सीरीज लेक्चर संभव हुआ है फ्रैंक सी चोकोलिंगो एंड हिज वाइफ इवैन मेरिया आज चोकोलिंगो, इनकी वजह से। तो both Chocolingos created the Chocolingo Living Trust in 1986. Then, as per their will, a donation was made to BHU for academic activities, and this Department of Philosophy and Religion is one among the beneficiaries, and we organize annually this lecture series. So, this is why we are gathered here. I again welcome all the students, PG students, research scholars, my colleagues, Professor Pradeep Gokhale sir, all persons who are present here.
Let me introduce our guest speaker, Professor Pradeep Gokhale sir. He is a distinguished scholar of Indian philosophy in general and Buddhism in particular. Professor Gokhale retired as Professor of Philosophy from the University of Pune, and later on he served as Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Research Professor at Tibetan Institute of Higher Studies in Banaras. He has written a number of books, and I am going to read some of the books he has composed. The first is Inference and Fallacies Discussed in Ancient Indian Logic, 1992. Vada Nyaya of Dharmakirti, The Logic of Debate. Hetu Bindu of Dharmakirti, A Point of Probability. Lokayat Charvak, A Philosophical Inquiry, published by Oxford University Press. Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, a new introduction to Buddhist roots of Yoga system. Classical Buddhism, Neo-Buddhism, and the Question of Caste, published by Routledge, India. The Philosophy of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, Sugava Prakashan, Pune. Dharma Te Dhamma. This is his latest book where he chronicles his journey from traditional person to Buddhist, how he became Buddhist and attracted to Dr. Ambedkar's Navayana Buddhism. Next book is Comrade Sharat Vitil यांचे वैचारिक योगदान आणि आंबेडकरवर विषमतेचा पुरस्कर्ता म्हणून. And these books are in Marathi. And the last but not the least विज्ञानाचे तत्वज्ञान, the philosophy of science. So these are some of the books among these numerous books. So he is an scholar par excellence, but he is not merely a scholar. He is deeply committed to idea of equality and egalitarianism, and he has organic connection with anti-caste movement of Maharashtra. So we are extremely happy to have him as a speaker on this occasion, and I would request Honorable Professor Gokhale sir to please come and deliver his lecture. Thank you.
Pathways to happiness, suggested in Indian philosophy, a human-centric approach. In today's presentation, I will talk about pathways to happiness in Indian philosophical tradition. While talking about it, I am not holding any particular metaphysical stand, but here, human being will be at the center. In this sense, I have called it a human-centric approach. Even as an inquirer in this field, I have to make my position clear. Let me make it clear that I am a seeker, not one who has achieved the goal. I am sadhaka and not siddha. In the Buddhist terminology, I am shaiksha, not a shaiksha. But when I call myself a seeker, the question can be asked, what am I seeking for? The answer will vary according to the conceptual framework in which the question is considered. If I accept a particular metaphysical belief system, then my goal will be charged by the underlying metaphysics. If I would be an Advaita Vedantin, I would say that I am seeking for realization of myself as Brahma. If I would be a Jaina, then I would say that I am seeking for the final state of Jiva, from which the karmic matter has been removed completely, and in which it realizes the four infinities: infinite intuition, infinite knowledge, infinite bliss, and infinite energy. If I am a Buddhist, I would say either I want to attain final cessation of suffering, or that I want to attain Buddhahood. But if the question is asked without any sectarian commitment, then one natural answer is, I want to be happy. Of course, when we say we seek happiness, we are not always clear about the concept of happiness. What is happiness? Is it the same as pleasure? Even in English, sometimes the words pleasure and happiness are used interchangeably, but sometimes a distinction is made between pleasure and happiness. A sensuous pleasure is just pleasure, it is not happiness. Happiness can be called a sustained state of mind. Even if happiness is called a feeling, it is a mental feeling, not sensuous one. But there can be degrees of happiness. We will soon come to that. In Sanskrit, the word sukha is used commonly for pleasure and happiness. Sometimes a distinction is made between sukha and ananda. Says that sensuous pleasure can be called sukha, whereas agreeable mental feeling can be called ananda. But there is no rule that the word sukha cannot be used in the sense of ananda. We are told about 3 different kinds of sukha in a verse which is found both in Mahabharata and the Buddhist text Udanavara. Yacca kama sukham goke, yacca divyam mahat sukham, krishnaakshaya sukhasyete, nadhaka shurashim kalam. The 3 types of sukha mentioned here are kama sukha, sensuous pleasure, divya sukha, heavenly pleasure, and krishnaakshaya sukha, the pleasure arising from cessation of craving. The verse says that whether it is sensuous pleasure or heavenly pleasure, it does not even form 16th part of the pleasure arising from cessation of cravings. Can these 3 types of pleasure be called pleasure in the same sense? Sensuous pleasure is an agreeable sensation. It may be intense, but impure, mixed with pain and conjugal. The so-called divya sukha is presumably not a sensation, though it is an agreeable mental experience. How intense it is not clear, but it is supposed to be much more pure and durable than the sensuous pleasure. Now, when the author of the verse says that the sukha arising from cessation of cravings is far more superior, that is more than 16 times superior to the other 2 sukhas, what he seems to suggest is that this sukha is not only greater than the other 2 pleasures in degree, but categorically different from them. One obvious contrast between them is that the other 2 pleasures arise by satisfaction of craving, though the craving continues or even grows after the satisfaction. The first type of pleasure, on the other hand, that is the Krishnaakshaya sukha, arises from cessation of cravings, not from satisfaction of cravings. The distinction between pleasure and happiness may be significant here. The sensuous sukha can be called pleasure. The so-called divya sukha, since it is mental and more sustained, would better be called a happy state than pleasure. But the sukha arising from cessation of Krishna, even if it is called happiness, is of a very different kind than the so-called divya sukha. Krishna's Kshaya Sukha is a happy state of being rather than a feeling or a mental experience. It is not generated by external causes and conditions. In order to distinguish this happiness from other types of happiness, I will express it as happiness with all letters capital in the article I have, happiness with all caps. So in that sense, a happy person would be equivalent to the Sthita Prajna of the Gita, Jivan Mukta of the Vedanta, Arhat of Theravada Buddhism, or Bodhisattva with Apratishthita Nirvana of Mahayana Buddhism, Sayoga Kevali of Deism, and Kevala Dhyanin of Sankhya and Yoga. Each of these concepts of happy person has twofold connotation. One is that of an elevated psychological state of an embodied person. The other connotation is related to the metaphysical realization which the happy person is supposed to have had. The metaphysical realization might differ from person to person according to the person's sectarian background, and it may have a role in shaping his or her elevated psychological state, but the particular metaphysical realization cannot be regarded as the defining feature of the psychological aspect of happiness. I want to suggest that happiness in this sense is possible without any of the metaphysical frameworks. One can just believe in this world and embody human existence in this world like a wise charvak, Sushikshita charvak would do, and pursue the path of happiness. I am suggesting that a Jivan Mukta charvak is a genuine possibility. Here I am not having any specific metaphysical system as the center of my inquiry into the nature of happiness and the way to happiness, but I am having a human being at the center. Let me try to clarify how I understand happiness. I want to distinguish this happiness from two other concepts of happiness. One, happiness defined in terms of pleasures. The idea of happiness highlighted by hedonistic ethics is that maximization of pleasures and minimization of pains. Personally, I feel that this kind of happiness is a legitimate human goal. This is a natural, biological, and rational tendency of all of us to pursue happiness in this sense. One can pursue this as an individual goal and also may universalize it as a goal worth pursuing by all, as Bentham and Mill did in their utilitarianism. But this is not happiness with all caps. Becoming happy does not mean accumulating more and more pleasures and reduce sufferings. Now, number two, happiness conditioned by specific situations. We many times talk about happiness and unhappiness as our responses to certain situations. I may be happy about something and unhappy about certain other things. I may be happy about my financial condition today and unhappy about the condition of farmers in Maharashtra all over India. To be happy about something and unhappy about something in this way can be justified. One cannot expect that one should be happy about everything and unhappy about nothing. Being unconditionally happy in this sense is a mark of insensitiveness or numbness. Of course, what one will be happy about and unhappy about can be different from person to person. It largely depends on the temperament of the person. One can also talk about development of one's temperament from moral and spiritual point of view. This too is different from what I call happiness. Now, if happiness is different from both the above types of happiness, what is it? First of all, I want to say that a happy person in this sense may not be having a feeling of happiness, but what is more important is that he or she is not disturbed, he or she is at peace in diverse situations. Hence, Krishnakshaya Sukha can better be understood as Shanti or Prashama. It can be sometimes felt as a feeling, but it may not always be felt. It is more a mode of being rather than a positive feeling. Though such a person, as a normal person, may pursue pleasures and avoid or reduce pains, he or she is not running after pleasures or getting disturbed by pains. He or she has developed a capacity to handle the situations of pleasure and pain with equanimous mind. Such a person is not happy because of pleasures or pains or absence of pains, but he or she is happy in spite of pleasures or pains. This becomes possible because the person has maintained peaceful, balanced or equanimous attitude towards pleasurable and painful situations. We have the emotions like samatva, titiksha, upesha, madhyasya in the moksha shastra literature of Hinduism, Buddhism and Jainism. They indicate this idea. I have suggested that a happy person may not always have the feeling of happiness or pleasure, but he or she is at peace in diverse situations. Now one can ask, where from does this peace come? The metaphysical moksha-centric systems may immediately come forward with their conceptions of the path leading to emancipation from suffering. These paths consist of two types of elements, empirical practical elements on the one hand and metaphysical on the other. These emancipatory systems generally attach prime importance to metaphysical vision as compared to the empirical practical aspect of the past. Hence the Advaita Vedantin would say that it is the realization of Brahman that will ultimately give peace. The Jaina might say that it is the destruction of all karmas leading to realization of the true nature of the self, as deep as they say, finite, infinite knowledge, intuition, energy and bliss. The Sankhyaik may say that it is the discriminating knowledge of Prakriti and Purusha. A Buddhist probably will not refer to any transcendental metaphysical insight as a necessary prerequisite of peace. The Buddhist may refer to empirical, practical conditions such as cessation of craving caused by realization of impermanence and insubstantiality of all phenomena. In fact, this is the peculiarity of Buddhism, that it can offer purely empirical, practical method of attaining happiness without reference to transcendental metaphysics. This empirical, practical method involves developing morality and moral perfection with the help of concentration meditation and mindfulness meditation. It involves the development of the sublime attitudes, namely Maitri, Karuna, Mudita and Upeksha. We will come to the details of that. One can say that this approach also has an element of spirituality, but I would say that this is spirituality without a spirit. Secondly, though the tradition of Buddhism contains the belief in the doctrines of karma and birth, I submit that the methods of moral development and moral perfection and the techniques of meditation can be practiced truthfully without such beliefs. Even a non-believer, person with materialist metaphysical orientation, can follow these techniques successfully. In fact, this is a peculiarity of these techniques, that they can be fruitfully practiced by believers as well as non-believers. The techniques themselves are secular and human-centric. They are not the worldly, soul-affirming or God-affirming. We are in a complex situation. We are surrounded by people with different metaphysical belief systems. Each belief system claims that it gives a way to ultimate happiness. These belief systems often make exclusive claims that they alone are capable of giving ultimate happiness. This gives rise to disagreements and conflicts. In this kind of situation, if we are able to handle conflicts without personal malice and hatred, then it can be a part of the pursuit of happiness. My concern here is to focus on the ways to happiness which can be commonly pursued by both the types of persons, those who believe in transcendental metaphysics and those who believe in secular reality. I will briefly discuss here 5 models suggested in philosophical tradition of India. One is Purushartha approach, that is choice of proper goals and pursuit of them as regulated by dharma that is development of altruism. This is one. Number two, yoga approach in its different forms. Number three, control over passions and cessation of cravings. Number four, living in the present. And number five, cultivation of sublime attitudes. Now first is Purushartha, that is moral regulation of human goals. We find in ancient Indian literature, both in Shastric literature and in poetry, references to four human goals, popularly called Purushartha. They are Kama, which is pleasure, Artha, which is wealth, Dharma, fulfillment of obligations, and Moksha, emancipation. We find different formulations and configurations of these goals in this literature, and modern scholars also have offered different interpretations. In the present context, I would like to make the following clarifications. Number one, as we have distinguished between pleasure and happiness, pleasures, particularly sensuous and aesthetic pleasures, will stand for Kama Purushartha, whereas happiness will correspond to Moksha. Two, traditionally, moksha as a human goal is understood in two forms. One is Jivan Mukti, that is Sadeha Mukti, that is emancipation of a living person, embodied emancipation. And number two, Videha Mukti, disembodied emancipation. I want to suggest that for a human-centric understanding of happiness, Moksha Purushartha should be understood as Jivan Mukti. The other type of Mukti, that is disembodied emancipation, could be either rejected or bracketed. Number three, there is an important issue about the relation of moksha with other purusharthas. Here we have two main approaches, that of exclusion and the other is that of inclusion. According to exclusivist approach, moksha being the highest and transcendent goal excludes all other goals. According to this approach, it is worthwhile to abandon all other goals for the sake of moksha. Hence, we have statements like the following. One, abandonment of kama is prescribed in the following statement. Vihaya kama yas sarvan kumau sarati vishtuha nirmamo nirahankaraha sashanti madhigacchati in the Gita. Then abandonment of artha is recommended in the following statement. Artham anartham bhavaya nityam nasti tatastu kalesha satyam. That is by Shankara. And abandonment of dharma is recommended in the following statement. Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma shutana. So this is about exclusivist approach. Now, according to inclusivist approach, however, kama and artha are to be controlled and regulated in accordance with dharma, and they are not to be rejected or condemned. Hence, we have statements like dharma viruddho bhuteshu kamosvi bharatarshava, this is in the Gita. And so Krishna says in the Gita that the kama, which does not contradict with dharma, that is my nature, that is what I am. And Kautilya, while recommending ideal way of life to the king, says that he should enjoy pleasure without hampering them. He should not be devoid of pleasures. Dharmartha virodhena kamam seveta na vishwasya. Here a clear distinction should be maintained between running after pleasures with attachment on the one hand and experiencing pleasures with the sense of equanimity and non-attachment on the other. Hence, according to the inclusivist approach, one can attain happiness by vigilantly following socio-moral obligations and pursuing individual goals within the limits of altruistic or universalistic moral pursuit. Now, third point about Purushartha. It is true that there is a basic contrast between Kama and Artha on the one hand and Dharma on the other. As Professor Barlinge, my teacher, used to put it, Kama represents the relation I for myself. Artha represents the relation others for myself, and Dharma represents the relation I for others. In other words, Kama and Artha are essentially egoistic goals, whereas Dharma is essentially an altruistic goal. Or Dharma may better be called a universalist goal. Here, the main point is that our egoistic tendencies represented by Kama and Artha should be controlled and regulated by the altruistic or universalistic tendency represented by Dharma. This can give a proper direction to the life of a person. A person can experience inner peace by leading the life of in this way. How is Dharma as a Purushartha to be understood is an important issue in this context. The concept of Dharma is multidimensional, and it may not be worthwhile to pursue Dharma with all its dimensions. For instance, it would not be, I would not prescribe Vedic ritualism as a part of Dharma, nor would I prescribe maintenance of hierarchical social order as a part of Dharma. Dharma for me should essentially stand for fulfillment of universal or common values such as truthfulness and non-injury. It can be a part of practice of yoga in its broad sense. So, with this discussion of Purushartha, I turn to the next way to the yoga approach in its various forms. One of the most important contributions of India to the world is yoga. Of course, what exactly the word yoga means may not be the same for different yoga practitioners or the students of yoga. For some, it may be just physical exercises or postures conducive to health. For some, it may be control over breathing. Some may understand just meditation to be the core of yoga. Again, under meditation, one may focus on a particular mantra such as Om, or some may associate yoga with Vipassana meditation or Preksha Dhyana. All these can be parts of yoga, but none of them exhaust the sense of the term yoga. By the term yoga, we many times mean the system of yoga propounded by Patanjali in the Yoga Sutra. The word yoga is used in Patanjali's system in two senses. One sense follows the definition of yoga as Chitta Vritti Nirodha, which refers to samadhi, that is the meditative trance, which is the goal to be achieved by the aspirant. But the word also refers to the path leading to the goal. When, for example, Patanjali talks about limbs of yoga or the yogangas, that is talking about the so-called Ashtanga. Yoga as path consists of 8 limbs. They are concerned with regulation of body, its functions such as breathing, sense organs, and mind. The path also includes prajna, which means wisdom or insight, though it is not directly mentioned in the 8-limb path. According to Patanjali, the aspirant attains truth-bearing wisdom, that is Uttamara Prajna, on the way from Sabija Samadhi to Nirbija Samadhi. This path prescribed by Patanjali in its nutshell can be compared with the threefold path of Buddhism in Nirvana, which is described as threefold training, that is Trishiksha, training in conduct, that is Shila, training of mind, that is Samadhi, and training in wisdom or understanding, that is Prajna. Shila refers to right conduct, Samadhi refers to concentration of mind by which it becomes free from emotional disturbances, and Prajna refers to wisdom or insight into the nature of reality. The idea can be generalized. I am suggesting that the term yoga can be understood in generalized sense without restricting it to Patanjali's system. Any system which consists of this threefold training or threefold disciplining leading to final emancipation can be called a yoga system. Buddhism also can be called a yoga system in this broad sense. Analogous to the threefold training accepted in Buddhism was the Jain model of three jewels, three ratna, which consists of Samyak Darshana, Samyak Jnana and Samyak Charitra, in which Samyak Darshana refers to right faith, which takes care of emotional aspects. Samyak Jnana refers to right cognitive attitude, and Samyak Charitra refers to moral regulation of conduct. An important point to be noted here is that when Buddhists advocate Tishiksha, they advocate all the three to be followed in an integrated way. Similarly, Jainas claim that all three jewels together is the path leading to moksha. They advocate the pursuit of all the three together. Hatha Yoga, as manifest in the Hatha Yoga Pradeep of Swatma Rama, which is a well-known system of yoga, can also be called a yoga system in this broad sense. It contains the regulation of conduct in the form of yamas and niyamas, regulation of bodily functions and breath in the form of asana, bandha, mudra and pranayama, regulation of mind and cognitive faculty in the form of samadhi and realization of Ishvara. In the Gita, we find the discussion of Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga as different roads leading to moksha. Jnana Yoga refers to right understanding of reality, Karma Yoga refers to regulation of conduct, and Bhakti Yoga refers to channelization of emotions towards the ideal which is identified as God. Though in the Gita itself the three roads are presented as if they are alternatives applicable to the aspirants of different temperaments, some commentators of the Gita have presented them as parts of an integrated yoga. Hence, in spite of variations in formulations, different systems advocate an integrated path to happiness which consists of proper activization, regulation and channelization of the three faculties: behavioral, emotive and cognitive. In general, we can see that all the above mentioned systems are all systems of self-discipline. Their points of emphasis are different, their understanding of metaphysical reality is different, but they are all concerned with regulation or disciplining the life by an aspirant himself or herself and leading it to happiness, peace and the state of harmony with the world. Traditionally, they are all regarded as moksha-oriented systems, though their metaphysical answers to the question about what exactly happens at the time of moksha are different. Hatha Yoga, as available in Hatha Yoga Pradipika of Swatmarama, accept the theistic non-dualistic metaphysics. Swatmarama regards Hatha Yoga as means to Raja Yoga, where the latter consists of samadhi, which leads to the ultimate realization, which amounts to the merger of mind into Atman and that of Atman into Paramatma. Patanjali's yoga system accepts metaphysics of Sankhya, supplemented by the doctrine of special kind of Purusha called Ishvara. The ultimate realization, according to Patanjali Yoga, consists of awareness of the distinctness between Drashta and Drishya, that is Purusha and Brahma. Like Patanjali's yoga, the position of the Gita could also be called as that of Sankhya with Ishvara. But Ishvara here is not just a special kind of Purusha, but he is the creator God. Hence, the ultimate realization according to the Gita consists in establishing a special relationship or identity with God. Jainism does not accept either Paramatman or Ishvara as the way they are understood by others, but it accepts Jiva as the eternal conscious substance, the states of ultimate realization according to it is absolutely pure and omniscient state of the disembodied Jiva. In Buddhism, neither Ishvara nor anything like Atman or Jiva is accepted, but according to it, there is a series of momentary consciousnesses which ceases at the time of nirvana as a result of the emancipating knowledge. Hence, there is so much diversity between the ultimate metaphysical states understood in these systems, but here I am not concerned with these ultimate metaphysical states. That is because in the metaphysical state, the aspirant transcends the state of a human being. Whether such an ultimate state exists or not, and if it exists, what is its exact nature, could be a matter of dispute. But my focus here is on the penultimate state rather than the ultimate state. I suppose that there will be greater agreement between the accounts of different systems regarding the nature of the penultimate state. Such a state will be a human state in which one experiences freedom from passions, freedom from fear, and the state in which one has a relation of love and compassion with other beings. Now, there are those similarities between different theories of meditation. Samadhi as concentrated attention or one-pointedness of mind is conceptualized in Buddhism, Jainism, as well as Patanjali Yoga. Basically, one has to distinguish between right concentration and wrong concentration. In Buddhism, the word Samyak Samadhi is used for distinguishing right concentration from wrong one. Abhidharma Buddhism distinguishes between akushala dhyana and kushala dhyana. Concentration on an object could be accompanied by defilements, but in that case it will be akushala dhyana. Kushala dhyana, on the other hand, is devoid of defilements, kleshas. In Patanjali Yoga, the same distinction is made by the commentator Vyasa in terms of vikshipta and ekagra chitta bhumi. According to Vyasa, there is samadhi, there is concentration in vikshipta bhumi also, but it does not have the status of yoga because the mind in it is dominated by kleshas, defilements. In ekagra chitta bhumi, there is reduction of defilement and hence it has the status of yoga. Similarly, in Jainism, the impure forms of concentration are identified as artha dhyana and raudra dhyana. The mind covered by sorrow gets engaged in the object of sorrow, which amounts to artha dhyana. Similarly, the mind covered by ill will and hatred gets involved in wrong thoughts, which amounts to raudra dhyana. As against such wrong concentrations, Jainism recognizes two types of meditative concentration which can be called right concentration. They are dharma dhyana and shukla dhyana, righteous meditation and spiritual meditation. Dharma dhyana amounts to concentration on various objects in which the objects vary from thought to sati. In shukla dhyana, initially there are gross and subtle objects of thought, that is vitarka and vichara, which gradually drop out, and finally there is realization of soul, that is Atman or Jiva. That vitarka and vichara are initial objects of meditation and they gradually drop out is a common feature of the Patanjali Yoga and the Buddhist theory of meditation also. In this respect, Rupa Dhyana and Buddhist of the Buddhist meditation theory closely resembles Samprajnata Samadhi as understood in Patanjali. Similarly, Arupa Dhyana of the Buddhist theory, that is formless meditation, which has objects such as space and nothingness, resembles Asamprajnata Samadhi of Patanjali Yoga, which is supposed to be meditation on the cessation of forms, that is Virama Pratyayabhyasa. These theories of meditation accept large ranges of objects of meditation. They include gross objects such as material elements, namely earth, water, fire, and air, specific doctrinal objects such as deity, soul, and God. The subtle objects or higher objects are chosen in the respective system from the metaphysical entities accepted in that system. But sometimes the range of objects goes beyond the sectarian threshold. Patanjali presents a range of objects in the first chapter of Yoga Sutra. He recommends there Ishvara as a special object of meditation. After recommending meditation on Ishvara as a means to removal of mental disturbances, he recommends the practice of meditation on a chosen single principle, that is Ekatattva Abhyasa. Then he introduces a series of such objects which include the four sublime attitudes, namely Maitri, Karuna, Mudita and Upesha, then suspension and retention of breath, then a mental state along with its object, Vishayavati Pravritti, an illumined mental state, that is Vishokava Jyotishpati, a passion-free person, that is Vitarag, and even dream experience, Swapna Nidra Dhyana Lampanam. He makes his list almost open-ended, and he says that the stability of mind can be attained by meditating on any object of one's own liking. Yatha Vimata Dhyana. This recommendation takes Patanjali beyond sectarianism and also suggests how yoga can be an open system. In meditative concentration, what is important is stability and purification of mind. The metaphysical status of the object of meditation is not so important, though it is emphasized by the respective systems. For a meditator, the object of meditation could be just an ideal state, conceptualized or hypostatized for the sake of meditation. Now I am introducing the third pathway, control over passions and cessation of cravings. My introduction of this model is inspired by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's conception of nirvana, which he develops in his magnum opus, The Buddha and Wisdom. In this work, Ambedkar can be said to be giving a human-centric and secular reconstruction of Buddhism. In a section called To Live in Nibbana is Dhamma, Ambedkar presents his conception of Nibbana. Nirvana or Nibbana in Pali is understood as a transcendent and ineffable state or an unconditioned dharma in classical Buddhism. It is also understood as the stoppage of the cycle of births and rebirths. Ambedkar distinguishes the Buddhist concept of Nibbana from the hedonistic pleasure as well as the yogic state of trance, which is a temporary state according to him. He also distinguishes it from the transcendent metaphysical state of a soul accepted in Brahmanical systems. As a transcendent state of consciousness, Nibbana is regarded as free from cravings as well as passions. But Nibbana for Ambedkar is not a disembodied state of consciousness, but a human state. Rather, it is the ideal human way of life. Nirvana, according to Ambedkar, amounts to cessation of craving. But now the question is, does it amount to cessation of passions also? Here Ambedkar refers to higher sermon, Agni Sutta, where it is said that passions are on fire. But according to him, Nibbana does not stand for extinction of fire, which would amount to cessation of life. Passions cannot be destroyed completely, but they should be put under control. One should not fall prey to passions. Ambedkar's conception of Nirvana, since it makes cessation of cravings, since it marks cessation of cravings, can be identified as happiness, which we have been talking about. According to Ambedkar, living the life by following the Noble Eightfold Path itself is living in Nirvana. Now I come to the next approach to cessation of to happiness, that is living in the present. An important mark of a happy person is that he or she lives in the present. We are related with past through memory and imagination, and they are related to the future through thinking, expectation, imagination, hope, fear, and so on. To say that a happy person lives in the present does not mean that he or she does not remember or think about the past. Nor does it mean that he or she does not think about possible or probable future. One can learn from the past for better life in the present. But if one lives in the past, it will make him or her unhappy. One can try to peep in the future, plan for the future, but if one lives in future, it can take away his or her happiness. The main point is that though one may be meaningfully related to past and future, one should not be attached to past and future, and hence one's relation with the past and the future should not disturb one's relation with the present. Two models are available in Indian tradition which provide for the idea of living in the present. One is Karma Yoga of the Gita, and the other is mindfulness meditation of Buddhism. Now, Karma Yoga is a way of living in the present. Of the three main yogas prescribed in the Gita, Jnana Yoga is metaphysically oriented, whereas Bhakti Yoga is religiously oriented. As compared to them, Karma Yoga is more secular and practical. In the Gita doctrine of Karma Yoga, there is a message to perform the duties as they were given without any attachment to the intended result. Hence, the Karma Yoga of the Gita can be understood as a way to happiness which has an appeal to living in the present. However, 2 points seem to be significant while adopting Karma Yoga. One question pertains to the determination of one's duty. The Gita prescribes that what is to be done and what is not to be done is to be determined on the basis of scriptures. Tasmat Shastram Pramanam te Karya Karya Vyavasthito. I will only say that we cannot recommend this policy today. The duties should be determined on rational and moral grounds rather than dogmatic or scriptural grounds. Number 2, the other question is about the role of desire in the practice of Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is sometimes called the way of Ishkama Karma, which means desireless action. But the concept of desireless action is not practically viable. Being impractical, it is not rationally justified also. There are no scriptures which we can blindly follow for deciding the proper course of actions. So, we have to consider the possible consequences of actions. We have to choose the course of actions which has more desirable consequences and least undesirable consequences. Hence, what is important is to desire what is desirable and not to desire what is not desirable. Becoming free from desire is not the legitimate way. The problem arises because although we may make the best choice of actions, there is no 100% guarantee that the course of action we choose will be successful and it will lead to the desired result. It is also possible that the action that we choose will lead to unintended, undesirable consequences. We should be mentally prepared for such a situation. That is possible if we focus on performance of the action and we are not attached to the fruit of the action. I submit that Karma Yoga should imply non-attachment to the result of the action. It need not imply absence of desires. It implies Anasakti Yoga and not Nishkama Karma. Now I come to the other formulation of the idea of living in the present, and that is mindfulness meditation as the way to living in the present. Buddhist meditation is divided into two types: concentration meditation and mindfulness meditation. In concentration meditation, we choose an object and concentrate on it with one-pointedness of mind. In mindfulness meditation, we do not choose an object but develop choiceless awareness of whatever object is given in the present. Through mindful awareness, we are supposed to develop insight into the true nature of things. We observe how phenomena are changing from moment to moment. This helps us in developing non-attachment about all phenomena. The Buddha in the sermons on mindfulness, that is Satipatthana Sutta, and another sutta is Mahasatipatthana Sutta, classified mindfulness into four types. One, mindfulness of bodily objects, that is Kayagata Sati; mindfulness of sensations, Vedanānupassana; mindfulness of mind, Chittanupassana; and mindfulness of doctrinal factors, that is Dhammanupassana. The practice of mindfulness of body involves vigilantly observing in-breathing and out-breathing as they happen from moment to moment, observing internally different parts of the body and the movements of the body. The practice of mindfulness of feeling, Vedanānupassana, involves checking the kinds of feelings or sensations one experiences in different parts of body, observing how the sensation arises and passes away, regardless whether the sensation is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, whether it is gross or subtle, worldly or unworldly. The practice of mindfulness of mind involves observing the state of one's own mind, whether it has desire, aversion, or delusion, whether it is happy or unhappy, free or not. The practice of mindfulness of doctrinal factors involves observing and identifying objects in terms of the doctrinal concepts such as hindrances, aggregates, enlightenment factors, and noble truths. There are different advantages of mindfulness meditation. Through this type of meditation, one realizes the changing nature of phenomena. Secondly, one develops the habit of seeing the things as they are objectively and avoiding subjective elements such as attachment and clinging. The Buddha praised this particular meditation as a single way to depart. In recent times, the late Satyanarayana Goenka has popularized mindfulness meditation. The 10-day Vipassana course launched by him starts by accepting the rules of conduct, that is Sila, as a vow to be followed during the course. Then the teaching of mindfulness of breathing is practiced for the first 3 days. It is not pranayama, that is the control of breath, but concentration on the natural course of breathing, in breathing and out breathing, as it takes place from moment to moment. The next stage is mindfulness about sensations, as they appear or do not appear in different parts of the body. It also involves awareness of impermanence of all sensations. Hence, Satyanarayana Goenka's course on Vipassana meditation focuses on two parts of Satipatthana. One, mindfulness of breathing, which is a part of mindfulness of body, and number two, mindfulness of sensations. Through the emphasis on realization of impermanence, one learns in this course how one can live in the present in one's experiential life. The two methods, Karma Yoga, which one finds in the Gita, and mindfulness meditation, which is found in Buddhism, are complementary to each other in their essence. Karma Yoga promotes living in the present in the field of performance of actions. It helps in avoiding attachment to the future results of an action. Whereas mindfulness meditation promotes it, that is living in the present in the experiential. Vipassana course concludes with the meditation of metta, that is loving kindness. It is a part of another important meditational and attitudinal practice promoted in Buddhism. It is the practice of 4 Brahma-viharas or 4 sublime attitudes. So I want to claim that it has its significance as a means to attainment of happiness. So let us turn to it, that is Brahma-viharas. The model of cultivation of 4 sublime attitudes. An important way to happiness is cultivation of morally sound attitudes with others. On this issue, Buddhism provides the doctrine of the 4 sublime attitudes, famously called the 4 Brahma-viharas. The 4 sublime attitudes accepted in Buddhism are metta or maitri in Sanskrit, that is friendliness or loving kindness, then karuna, that is compassion, then mudita, that is appreciative gladness, and upekha or upeksha, that is non-attachment or equanimity. In the early Buddhist dialogue and also later works like Visuddhimagga, these sublime attitudes are discussed as the objects of meditation. As objects of meditation, they assume the form of wishes or thoughts or attitudes that one is supposed to cultivate in one's mind. Now let us consider the nature of the 4 attitudes. First is maitri, that is friendliness or loving kindness. The first sublime attitude is maitri. Maitri can be understood as love. It is translated as loving kindness. But it is selfless love or love without expectation from the object of love. There are certain beings with whom we are naturally inclined to feel loving kindness, but this feeling is not to be restricted to them, it is to be applied universally. Of course, making a feeling universal is not an easy thing. It is to be done step by step and systematically. Buddhism developed a technique by which it can be done. In this context, I also want to suggest that another term for Brahma-vihara is apramana. Apramana is immeasurable. So all the 4 attitudes are to be practiced as immeasurable attitudes, apamaya or pramana. Now, Buddha Ghosh in Visuddhimagga explains how an aspirant should practice loving kindness. First, in relation to oneself, because it is very natural. Then, the teacher or preceptor or the equivalent. Then, the dearly loved persons. Then, the neutral persons. And lastly, the hostile persons. And in this way, make the attitude truly universal. The next one is karuna, compassion. Just as loving kindness is about happiness of all beings, karuna or compassion is about suffering of all beings. Karuna involves sensitiveness or concern about the suffering of all beings and the wish or desire that suffering of all beings may be removed. There are certain beings, namely the unlucky and the unfortunate, who are obviously worthy of compassion. But this feeling is not to be restricted to them, it is to be applied universally. Like loving kindness, making compassion universal is not an easy thing, it is to be done step by step and systematically. So Buddhism developed a technique by which it can be done. So Buddha Ghosh in Visuddhimagga explains how compassion should be first practiced in relation to wretched, unlucky and unfortunate persons. Then the evil-doing person, although he may be happy. Then the dear person, then the neutral person, and then the hostile person. And in this way, make the attitude truly universal. Then we come to mudita, that is appreciative gladness. Mudita is the attitude of appreciative gladness with specific happy and successful conditions of all beings. one may naturally feel gladness or seeing a dear and beloved person. But this feeling is not to be restricted to such persons, it is to be compared universally. So there, in Shuddhi Mantra, the Buddha says that it should be practiced first in relation to good companion or a dear person, but then it should be extended to neutral person and even to hostile person. So if the person who is hostile, if he attains some success, we should be happy about it, not necessarily have envy or hatred about such a person. Now, the cultivation of these three sublime attitudes is a method of harmonizing our relationships with others. It can be understood in a larger framework of equalities and inequalities among living beings. This can be understood on the following lines. It is a fact that I can equate myself with other persons in some respects. I may be better than some other person in some respect, and other person may be better than me in certain other respect. Here, being better or equal can be understood in a general sense, including the aspects such as material wealth, power, intellectual success, moral strength, and spiritual achievement. In a way, we have to accept these objective conditions of wellness, betterness, or otherwise as facts of life. The three sublime attitudes, namely Maitri, Karuna, and Mudita, can be regarded as a healthy responses to the conditions of equality and inequality. Maitri can be regarded as a healthy response to the condition of equality, whereas Karuna and Mudita can be regarded as healthy responses to the conditions of inequality. We can say in this way that the first three sublime attitudes, namely Maitri, Karuna, and Mudita, constitute a whole. Upeksha, the fourth sublime attitude, seems to fall outside the whole, but in fact it is meaningfully related to the whole. So it is for that it is important to understand the meaning of Upeksha. So what is Upeksha? The word Upeksha is used in Indian philosophical literature in at least two senses. One meaning of the term is indifference, negligence, or avoidance. The other meaning is equanimity or an unattached attitude to the object. In the Buddhist theory of the four sublime attitudes, the term Upeksha is used in the second sense, that is equanimity or non-attachment. According to the theory of Brahma Viharas, just as one has to extend the attitudes of Maitri, Karuna, and Mudita towards all beings, one has to extend the attitude of Upeksha towards all beings. What does it mean? One has to develop equanimity or detachment towards all beings. One has to see beings as beings, irrespective of their pleasant or unpleasant characteristics. In this sense, Upeksha would be a kind of neutral attitude. It is natural for one to feel equanimity on seeing a person who was neither beloved nor unloved, but according to Buddhism, this attitude is to be generalized and extended towards all. So similarly, this attitude is to be practiced first in relation to the neutral person, then dear person, then boon companion, then the hostile person, and then ultimately even with regard to oneself. And in this way, make the attitude truly universal. As against the first three attitudes, namely Maitri, Karuna, and Mudita, the last sublime attitude, namely Upeksha, which we have understood as detachment or equanimity, is a regulating principle in the sense that it demarcates and regulates the scope of other three principles. Here the idea is that Maitri, Karuna, and Mudita as the sublime attitudes are worth practicing only insofar as they are qualified by equanimity or non-attachment. In fact, even their nature and scope is to be defined and demarcated in the light of the principle of non-attachment. Now I want to argue that the Buddhist theory of Brahma Vihara suggests a program of moral development and moral perfection. this ethics can be appreciated as virtue ethics. It is not just concerned with moral law or consequentialist rules of conduct, but it is primarily concerned with the development of moral character and through that reaching a moral ideal. What is aimed there is not just happiness as an occurrent feeling, but a disposition, or a way of being. It is aimed at what we call happiness. The cultivation of four sublime attitudes gives a program not only of moral development, but it has a spiritual dimension. Here, what I mean by spirituality should be made clear. Spirituality, according to me, is concerned with harmonization of one's relation with oneself. It neither presupposes belief in the existence of soul nor in that of God. According to my understanding, it does not presuppose other worlds and rebirth either. Of course, it does presuppose the existence of mind, that is, mental phenomena such as cognition, believing, recollection, imagination, volition, feelings and emotions understood in their occurrent and dispositional sense. Spirituality is concerned with harmonization of them, removal of disturbances and impurities from them. It is concerned with being in purity and peace with oneself in this sense. Buddhism holds that our actions are preceded by mind. Morality and immorality of actions are determined by purity and impurity of mind, respectively. Purification of mind makes morality naturalized and perfect. In this sense, I identify spirituality with moral perfection. I would not like to give any metaphysical status to spirituality about this. I have tried to suggest so far that the doctrine of four Brahma-viharas as formulated by the Buddha and developed by the Buddhists like Buddha Gokhale is an important contribution to moral psychology. The doctrine constitutes a whole which, if practiced rigorously, can lead to moral development and moral perfection. Friends, I began by saying that I am a seeker, not a person who has read the book. So I cannot share the so-called established ultimate truths, but I can share some of my ideas which I have formed on the basis of my successful and unsuccessful thoughts and thought experiments as a seeker. And I have tried to do that. I may submit here that my interest in the theme pathways to happiness is not purely academic, it is very much concerned with the real life experience. The question before me is, can a non-believer like me be happy in the ultimate sense? I have tried to show that Krishnakshay Sukha can be called ultimate happiness, which is different from sensuous pleasure and conditional happiness. It is the goal which can be pursued within human-centric framework without transcendental metaphysical beliefs. I have called it happiness with all caps. It is generally believed that the belief in Brahman or God, or at least in rebirth, is essential in order to attain ultimate happiness. I have tried to make a case for the pursuit of happiness which bypasses or brackets such transcendental beliefs. Happiness is really a moral spiritual goal where spirituality is understood as moral perfection, and I understand truthfulness and non-violence as the basic moral principles which imply harmonization of the relation with oneself and others. I want to make a humble claim that pursuit of morality and moral perfection in our sense is itself a source of inner peace. It can be called moral satisfaction or moral happiness and can be distinguished from sensuous pleasure and conditional happiness. Even if there are losses and gains, ups and downs in my practical life, I can be at peace and happiness and can face and handle such uneven situations with equanimous mind. Here, the source of my peace can be my conscience, which says that I have chosen a morally right goal and I am pursuing it. I am pursuing truthfulness and non-injury. I am cultivating loving kindness towards all and evil and hatred towards none. Now I want to claim that whatever I say by accepting a secular framework is relevant to the religious believers also. Whether Brahman is there or not, God is there or not, afterlife is there or not, the final spiritual goal articulated in religious metaphysical systems cannot be attained without pursuing morality and moral perfection. One can bypass the belief in God or Brahman or life after death and pursue morality and moral perfection, but one cannot attain the transcendent metaphysical goals such as God or Brahman or Nirvana by bypassing morality and moral perfection. That is why Shankara in his Brahma Sutra Bhashya regarded detachment over this worldly and otherworldly pleasures, that is Ihamantra Phala Bhoga Virag, and accumulating the moral qualities such as peace and control over senses, Shama Dhamma Sadhana Sampan, as the prerequisites of the inquiry into Brahma. And other soteriological systems also generally regarded morality as the prerequisite of emancipation. However, they regarded metaphysical knowledge as a necessary component of the ultimate happiness. I am suggesting that it is not necessary to go for a so-called transcendental metaphysical realization. We could just try to achieve the goal of happiness as a human goal, not as a metaphysical goal. So, may all be happy. Thank you.
You have had such a profound meditations on the goals of ultimate happiness. Now, I'm sure that you will have a lot of questions and queries today, because without debate, without interlocution, without questioning, no lecture can be complete. So now I invite those of you who have any question to please come forward, come here and put your questions. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir. It was indeed a wonderful lecture. And I was wondering, when you said that I am practicing love and kindness towards all, and I hope that most of us wants to achieve that goal. But I was wondering that when we people kind of inculcate such things, that we are on the path of loving everyone, spreading kindness towards everyone, being humble and polite towards everyone, sometimes we are seen as meek and weak, and people take advantage of that. So, how you will suggest the young generation to be humble, polite, loving, and kind towards people, and at the same time being strong enough to face any adversity? So, how will you give your long years experience to us, sir, in the form of your wisdom? Thank you, sir.
It is certainly true that practical success, practically becoming successful is a very important aspect of life. One has to pursue that. And I have not discussed that because that is mainly concerned with, understanding life, facing life, and also, I have said that yes, having desires, having goals of life, even in terms of artha, kama is all right, it is appropriate, and one should not say that moksha is the only goal and other goals are to be, let's say, rejected. So my approach is inclusivist rather than exclusivist, and that one has to do. I mean, at the same time, one has to realize one's own limitations, and that is important when we pursue happiness. Strengths and limitations, both we should be aware of. That is the most general possible answer.
Anybody else? Yes.
Firstly, thank you so much for your good talk, and it's a really interesting and important factor. And my query is that can you consider or which path you have suggested to us to attain the highest goal of human life? This is one, and secondly, can you consider there is a intersection point of yoga, spirituality and religion, which can be a kind of path through which we can attain the highest goal of human life?
Actually, two questions. One is, I have suggested, I mean, I have not suggested, but I have, so to say, made a survey of different paths suggested in the Indian philosophical tradition. Now, out of them, what I prefer most, that can be an important question, but I want to suggest that they are all in a way interrelated. I have not tried to bring out the interrelation. But certainly two things are important, that is living in the present and Brahma Viharas. And living in the present in terms of both Karma Yoga as well as mindfulness, living mindfully, living in the present, and at the same time developing sublime attitudes towards all. These two I regard as most important. This is what I try to practice.
Yes. And identify yourself.
The second question was about the religious goal, and I have made some comments about that. That is, suppose you are following a particular faith, a particular religious faith, and then I am suggesting that yes, one can pursue happiness in the framework of that particular faith, but even in that particular religious faith, this morality and moral perfection must have an important place. Without that, if you just say that this is my metaphysical belief and I will just pursue it in whatever way I can, then that will not give happiness. That can give discouragement.
Please identify yourself first, then put your question.
Myself Chandrakant Misra, a student of MA Department of Philosophy Religion. So, sir, my question is little bit of out from the topic regarding of happiness. So, sir, in this episode life, if we will take the perspective of Albert Camus, the concept of absurdity, where concept of absurdity, where the human is seeking for the meaning of life and seeking for the meaning of purpose of life. Each only thought that think that happiness is only the way. There is no other way of human life, because if there is sadness in human life, there is the only way to tackle it by a smile. We have no other option. Tackle by a smile. Smile. There is no other option. If we feel sad, nothing will happen. So the only last option of human being is, I think, the happiness. What is your view on this?
Anyway, the question is not very clear to me, sir. But I mean, this absurdity cannot, I personally feel that cannot be the answer to our problems. We have to give meaning. If meaning is already not there, I mean, there are also existentialists would say that there is actually no meaning in life. Meaning is something that we give to life. So we have to think that is what I say, like we cannot live just in present in the sense that we cannot think about future. We have to think about future and we have to plan for the future. All these things we have to do and give meaning to life, and then according to that meaning we have to live life, but at the same time we have to reduce the attachment to the future. In future what will happen, suppose you start thinking about that and be attached to that, then that is something problematic. And many times the so-called notion of absurdity arises because of confusing many things together, mixing many things together. So you have to analyze, and then maybe the absurdity will go away, and you can find the meaning.
Now you told that the life should, we should give meaning to our life. That is the purpose to our life. So somewhere I am convinced that we should give meaning to our life. But the meaning we are giving and the destiny we are getting out of it, it is not matching, sir. We are thinking something and happening like in the instance are not going like that. So is it not good to accept whatever is happening?
No, because that will not solve your problems. You cannot just accept whatever is happening. That means you have to suppress your desires. That is not good. Your desires are important, your aims are important, you should not suppress them, you should try to pursue them, but you have to pursue them in a social framework. You have to realize that not only you have certain desires, others also have certain desires. So you have to pursue your desires in such a way that others are also able to pursue their desires. So the awareness of other persons, their desires, is also important, not just focusing on my own desire, but suppressing desire and just accepting whatever is happening. That is not the proper way. You have to accept in the sense, cognitively you have to accept. That is, this is what is happening and I have to accept it. Accept it means cognitively, but not that I cannot change it, so I should not try to change it. That is not the proper.
Hello everyone, I'm Avinash. सर मेरा क्रिटिसिज्म है बेसिकली, और खासकर जो टॉपिक पे आपने बोला है, जिस टॉपिक को सामने रखा गया है, उस पर मेरा क्रिटिसिज्म है। बेसिकली अभी के टाइम पे जो एक डिस्टोपियन सोसाइटी में हम जी रहे हैं, शायद बहुत अरसे पहले उसकी कल्पना करी गई थी कि सम फ्यूचर में कभी कुछ ऐसा होने वाला है कि जब इस बात का आशंका हो कि आफ्टर वर्ल्ड वॉर सेकेंड यहाँ पे बहुत कुछ हो सकता है। जो एक डिस्टोपियन एरा का हमने कल्पना कर रखा था बहुत काफी अर्से पहले, वो चीज आज के डेट में यहाँ पे हो रहा है, इसी वर्ल्ड में, इसी कंट्री में हो रहा है। बट स्टिल इससे हम कहीं ना कहीं अनअवेयर हैं, या इसे हम आइडेंटिफाई नहीं करना चाहते हैं, जस्ट बिकॉज ऑफ कि कुछ हमारा अपना पर्सनल इंटरेस्ट है जो वहाँ पे कन्फ्लिक्ट होता है, जो वहाँ पे इंटरव्यू होता है, और इससे हम बचना चाहते हैं। मेरा सवाल यहाँ पर ये है कि ऐसे डिस्टोपियन एरा में हैप्पीनेस की बात करना ये सच में वर्थ है? फर्स्ट थिंग। सेकेंड, अगर हम हैप्पीनेस की बात भी करते हैं तो उसका फॉर्म क्या होना चाहिए? आई मीन जहाँ पे जेनोसाइड हो रहा है, जहाँ पे बच्चों को मारा जा रहा है बकायदा, जहाँ पे वर्ल्ड वॉर 3 होने वाला है। बचपन में हमने फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर, सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर पढ़ा था, हमने 1945 में याद आ रहा है जहाँ पे लिटिल बॉय ऑन फाइट में करके 2 एटम बम गिराए गए थे। बट स्टिल वो चीजें अभी भी आज के डेट में भी दोहराई जा रही हैं। यूँ कह सकते हैं कि अलग तरीके से उसे दोहराया जा रहा है। तो फिर ये चीजें कहाँ तक वर्थ है? हो सकता है कि इसके काउंटर ये कहा जा सकता है कि when all the wars are over, a butterfly will still be beautiful. But still, अगर हम रियलिटी में आते हैं, अगर हम देखते हैं तो फिर इसका मतलब क्या है कि आई मीन कुछ प्रैक्टिसेस करने के बाद, कुछ योगास करने के बाद, या फिर गीता का जो क्रम योग है, अगर उसे हम अप्लाई कर लेते हैं और हमें ऐसा लगता है कि जो भी हैप्पीनेस है वो हमारा सेल्फ होना चाहिए, जो लाइक आपने जो स्पिरिचुअलिटी का जो आपने डेफिनेशन दिया, वो सेल्फ होना चाहिए, वो सेल्फ हमारा आउटर और इनवर्ड दोनों एक साथ होना चाहिए। बट रियल लाइफ में तो ऐसा नहीं देखने को मिलता है। हम इनवर्ड ज़्यादा होते हैं, आउटवर्ड काफ़ी कम होते हैं। हमें कुछ खास उससे मसला ही नहीं होता है कि बाहर एक्चुअल में क्या चल रहा है। तो द पॉइंट इज कि डिस्टोपियन एरा में एक व्यक्ति अपने हैप्पीनेस को कैसे प्रिजर्व करके रख सकता है, जो कि कहीं ना कहीं मुश्किल है, और कहीं ना कहीं वो एक ऐसा पाथवे ढूंढने की कोशिश करेगा जहाँ पे वो चीज़ों को बेहतर कर सके। सो
मैं आपसे बिल्कुल सहमत हूँ कि इस समाज में, इस दुनिया में बहुत कुछ हो रहा है जिससे हम या तो वाकिफ नहीं है, वाकिफ है तो भी जो भी है वो प्रेजेंट नहीं है, तो हमें वो बदलना चाहिए, ऐसा हमें लगता है। तो क्यों नहीं चाहिए, बदलना चाहिए। इसीलिए मैंने कहा कि my own desire and the desires of others, my own problems of others, all these are to be taken together, considered together. And again, it is not that I will not experience pleasures and pains at all, but how to face that? Even if you are a social worker, suppose you think that this is something, the caste system is bad, the condition of farmers is very bad, this should change, the laws should change. Now, for that you have to struggle, all right. But even while struggling, if you just are attached to what you are doing, then you may not be able even to do what you want to do. So you have to keep the balance of mind even while struggling, even while having a conflict. So how to have a conflict, how to enter into conflict, that too peacefully, that is very important. You should not become just a part of that conflict, but you should be able to observe how conflict is taking place, participating in that, and also look at it in a detached manner as an observer. So that is the kind of dialectics, I think.
Good afternoon, everyone. So myself, Harshkumar Tiwari, and I'm pursuing the BA Philosophy and the third year. So my question is basically divided into 2 parts. First of all,
Be brief. No.
Firstly, in a commercialist society, in a commercialist society has become commercialist. The motto of the people is the more is better. How can we talk about happiness where happiness that people are seeking contrasts with the core Indian principles, and this contrast leads to anxiety and I would say environmental degradation. Secondly, my question is, when we talk about happiness, don't you the pursuit of happiness, don't you think we fall into the paradox of pursuit? If we seek for it, search for it, the less we find it. But as I say that happiness is a byproduct of life, it is not a target to be hit. And then when we talk about the scale of universe, we see that the universe is not designed to be perfect, or it is not designed for continuous or maximum pleasure or happiness. But we can learn from the universe that it is designed for hardship.
Be brief. With the others have in mind.
So is it not better that when we talk about happiness, we should focus on resilience rather than finding happiness? I mean, my core question is that we fall into the paradox of pursuit while chasing happiness.
answer all of the questions. But I am not saying that attaining happiness, there is something like happiness which we have to attain, that is our goal. I mean, happiness, I have said, with all capitals, is a state of being, is a way of life. It is not something which is to be achieved in life. So, all the problems are there and you have to face those problems. How we should face those problems? And happily here does not, I mean, maybe it will be because the word happy is related to pleasure, so attaining something, achieving some state of mind, that is not what I am talking about.
So my name is Priyanshu Kumar Pandey and I am a second year student of philosophy. And my question is that you said the thing about morality being present or the meaningful meditation. How you see the deontological concept of Immanuel Kant and Karma Yoga of Gita, sir? So because that is my concern. That is I want to ask.
I mean, the question I raised actually, that is how to determine duty. Now, in the Gita, the answer is Tasmat Shastram Pramanam. Determining duties could be either, purely on rational grounds or on the grounds of faith or dogma. In the Gita, what is prescribed is something like faith or dogma. That is because second sex is a duty which is prescribed to you by Shastra, therefore you should follow that.
Don't question.
Yes, please.
Now,
Professor,
let him speak.
Deontology of Immanuel Kant is similar to that.
No, I am pointing out the difference.
Yes, sir.
You be patient.
Gita is not a rationalist approach. It is a faith-based approach. And therefore, there the determining principle of duty is Shastra. Whereas Kant would suggest something different. Both are in a way deontological approaches, duty for the sake of duty, but how to decide duty is a very important point.
And sir, Karma Yoga.
But हो गया. Yes.
That is scripture, which says to follow or be in the practical life, you will have to do the act or action without focusing on the goal, without just focusing on the goal.
That is okay. The question is how to decide the duty. That question.
And no contour question.
Good afternoon, Professor. My name is Shivam Pandey and I am a postgraduate student in the Department of Philosophy. So my question is related to the Vedantic context. I find in the Vedantic literature two kinds of seekers of truth or self-realization. One is the kind of people like Ashtavakra and Sanat Kumar Munis who are living a life completely away from the sources of desires and aesthetic life. The second one is like those of Jana who are living a normal life but still being detached from it. So I want to ask you that which one of the ways, which one of the approaches do you find to be the superior ones out of the two?
There is something similar to Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga in the Gita. So somebody is just following Jnana Yoga, but that does not mean that they do not perform any action they are doing. So just following Jnana Yoga would be misleading if you just say that I am Brahman and I am not doing actually anything. As an embodied person, you are doing many things. So this is something you have to realize. So Karma Yoga is certainly superior to that in that sense. Because at least one is realizing that I am also an embodied person and I am doing it.
I wonder whether